I'm going back to the beginning just because I like to say my name. Good evening. I'm Trudy Murata from Springfield, Virginia, and I'm a volunteer community ambassador with AARP Virginia. I want to welcome you to our Downsizing and Decluttering webinar this evening, and thank you for joining us. The Global Council on Brain Health recommends declutter your life in their report on mental well-being. And a recent survey found the #1 thing that impedes people in leaving their home or getting health care into their home is that they simply have too much stuff. So we applaud you for deciding to spend time with us this evening to learn new strategies, to share our decluttering tips. You can share yours as well. We'll talk about that later. The goal of this program is to help participants gain a general understanding of why stuff is so important to some people and learn easy, practical downsizing and decluttering tips. In the reminder for today's session, we included a link to download the slide presentation, and in the follow-up email you'll receive after the program will include many of the resources that we've mentioned, and will also include some of your ideas and suggestions for downsizing and decluttering. And now, onto our program. I have some help this evening. We have Sarah Jacobs, Sheila Hans, and Ann Confer in the background who'll be helping me with the chat box and the Q&A section. So if you do have questions or ideas and suggestions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A box. And now on to the star of our program. We are thrilled to be joined this evening by Genesis Webb. Genesis, like me, is also an AARP Virginia volunteer community ambassador, and we are very fortunate to have her on our team. When she's not volunteering with AARP, Genesis is a nurse practitioner. She is passionate about geriatric health outcomes and specializes in urologic medicine for our nation's veterans. She completed her bachelor's degree in nursing at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, and earned her Master of Science in Nursing at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. She also holds national board certification with the American Association of Nurse Practitioners as an adult geriatric nurse practitioner. In her free time, she enjoys event planning, reading, traveling, and is committed to community service. Genesis voluntarily conducts downsizing and decluttering webinars on behalf of AARP. So hopefully the information we cover and the resources we share tonight will help you make informed decisions to downsize and declutter your belongings. And so with that, let's give a warm Zoom welcome to Genesis Webb. Genesis, the platform is yours.
Thank you so much, Trudy, for the warm welcome, and welcome everyone to the Downsizing and Decluttering. You Can't Take It With You with AARP tonight. Once again, my name is Genesis Webb, and I'm a community ambassador volunteer with AARP. Very excited to facilitate tonight's conversation. So we're going to get started. We all know this familiar icon. If you know who it is, you can put his name in the chat. But I want you to remember this face. This familiar icon is King Tut, and we will have a lot more to say about him later. So make sure you remember that face today. Just to go over the general agenda, we do have a couple of key goals for our session today. We want to help us all gain a general understanding of why stuff is so important to some people. And we want to learn practical, easy to follow downsizing and decluttering tips. We also want to have a lot of fun tonight, so we may share a few laughs. Before we begin, just to remind you, this is a Zoom platform. We have a Q&A session and a chat box available. The Q&A session will be for questions that we'll answer later. And I believe Trudy said this, but just to remind you, the raise your hand feature does not work during this session, okay? This is a judgment-free zone. We want to hear from you all, and we want to hear your ideas. We've learned through this programming that we gain a lot of information just from the participants and listeners. So in 2011, a study was done, and it marked the beginning of a large age wave with over 10,000 people turning 65 every day in the United States for the next 20 years. 15% of America is over 65 right now. And in 40 years, 33% of America will be over 65. This will be the largest, most powerful buying group in America. This may be the last time we will have 4 generations still alive at the same time. For our older Americans, the age gap between their parents and themselves is about 20 years. And for our Gen Xers, they are 30 to 35 years older than their kids. The 2 oldest generations have the most stuff, and both generations want to pass it down to the 2 youngest generations. However, we are distinctly different socially and financially. We want to look at the differences between some of our generations, and I do want you guys to participate in the chat box, and we'll hear some of your answers. Can anyone tell me the differences between the greatest generation and the baby boomer generation? What major event symbolizes the lives of the greatest generation? Feel free to write in the chat box.
And we have World War II, the Great Depression.
Yes. What about for our baby boomers? What major event symbolizes the lives of our baby boomers?
The Summer of Love, JFK, Vietnam, the Civil Rights Movement, the Beatles, the end of World War II. Oh, I like that answer. Rock and roll. Okay.
We love that. Okay. Another question for you guys. What did underage greatest generation members lie about their age to do? Does anyone know?
Being able to drink, whether or not they went to Woodstock. Drink, smoke, enlist, join the army, enter the military.
Yeah. And what about our Gen X or our millennial? Anybody know what they've lied about their age to do?
Some of them may have lied about going to Woodstock too. Vaping, clubbing, getting into bars. How old they need to be on Facebook. Oh, voting. Voting's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Good answers. I love the participation. Thank you so much. The importance of this is so we can see that these are distinctly 2 different people in 50 years' time. We want you guys to see the differences. Although there are many similarities in our different generations, this is going to be important to know why these differences matter with regards to decluttering and the stuff that we have. So why does all of this matter? Well, we have the largest group ever needing healthcare. 2 of the generations attach pride to their possessions. We're facing a shortage of affordable housing. Healthcare costs are rising. And the number one thing that impedes people from leaving their home or getting healthcare into their homes is the stuff. So this is very important. Good Run Research interviewed 1,000 caretakers, and the thing that caused the most stress for people was this stuff. We have worked so hard for all of our stuff, but the cold reality is sometimes our kids and our grandkids don't even want it. The biggest problem is no one wants our stuff, and we have to let that sink in a little bit. So we're here to help. We want to talk to you guys about some tips going forward. We're going to give you 10 tips as to how we get rid of our stuff. Once again, during this tip session or helpful hints, this is interactive. So please feel free to provide some information in the chat box if you have any ideas. So for tip number 1, we want you guys to include everyone when you're thinking about downsizing. Your husbands, your grandkids, everyone you can think of. By a show of hands, and you can use your raise your hand feature for this, who has lived in their home more than 5 years? Okay, I saw about a little over 50 or 60 hands. What about 10 years? Has anyone lived in their home more than 10 years? Quite a few of you. Good, good. What about 15 years? Has anyone lived in their home for over 15 years? Still quite a few hands raised. Has anyone lived in their home over 20 years? Wonderful. Wow, look at that. Still lots and lots of hands raised. Okay, it's getting tougher. Has anyone lived in their home over 30 years? Still a good number of hands. What about 40 years? Has anyone lived in their home over 40 years? I'm seeing about an average of about 20 or so. And last but not least, 50 years. If you've lived in your home for over 50 years, raise your hand. Awesome. 18 raised hands for over 50 years. See, some of us have lived in our home for over 50 years. So when you think about this, do you think that you can downsize and declutter by yourself in one weekend? No way. We need help getting this task done, even if you prefer to do it by yourself. It's important to include everyone in the home. It's important not to exclude your spouse or certain family members just because you don't think they want to help. Give everyone, including the grandkids, a chance to help you declutter. This is a tip that I love to share. This is called the 10-minute sweep. This is the best way to clean a room. Instead of looking at your room as a whole, which can become very overwhelming, you want to look at small 2-foot by 2-foot areas. I always compare this to losing 50 pounds. If you try to do it in a week, it doesn't work. But if you focus on 1 pound at a time, it can work. So if you have everyone in the family pick a 2-foot by 2-foot area, everyone cleans for about 10 minutes or so, not more than 10 minutes, not less than 10 minutes. It can help make this decluttering, a little bit more effective and not seem so overwhelming in the beginning. So if you try this at night, 10 minutes before your favorite TV show comes on or as dinner's cooking, stay consistent 5 nights a week, every week, and you will see that your home will start to look cleaner and cleaner after a few weeks. So the 10-minute sweep. The next tip is about unpacking your bags. I need you guys' help with this one. What is the proper way to unpack a bag after vacation?
We have before the next vacation. Immediately upon coming home, come home, take your clothes to the laundry room, dump it out, put the stuff back in place, and the next night.
Good, good. We often hear 2 answers. First is immediately when you get home, and like someone else said, right before the next trip. So, the same holds true for things like groceries. When you get home, unpack them immediately. Don't put the bag down. If you don't put it down, it won't get put away. So we recommend unpacking your bags immediately. The longer you wait, the more things pile up. For tip number 4, If you think of things in your home as having a place, that can really help. You don't let stuff you bring home stack up. Put everything where it is supposed to go. Groceries go in the kitchen, tools go in the garage, clothes go in the closet, which brings us to another rule. And this is a harder one to follow. Equal in, equal out. That means when you bring something into your home, something of the same size comes out. Just because the item is on sale doesn't mean our homes get bigger. That's a tip I have to follow. So equal in, equal out. Okay, this is a good, very, very good tip, and it may seem a little bit overwhelming. So, you'll have access to this information after this presentation is over, so don't be overwhelmed. This is the 4-pile sort. Keep, sell, donate, and trash. How does it work? Well, when you're sorting your items, you want to break them into 4 piles. Keep, sell, donate, trash. It's important to put the sell and the donate right next to you, and the keep pile farther away. It's amazing to see how much we keep if we don't have to walk all the way over to the other side of the room to keep it. So keep the sell and donate pile closest to you, and the keep pile should be farther away. For tip number 6, this is our legacy items, which have, valuable meaning to us all. We want to distribute legacy items now, which means you're no longer telling your loved one that you will give them something when they're gone. So many times we hear people say they want to wait to give something away to their children when they pass away. The reality is you should give it to them now. Giving it away now actually lets you see them enjoy it, and it empties your home faster as well. So it's a win-win. You also want to make sure you really want to get rid of it. And, if you don't, or if you're not ready, then stop saying that you're going to give it away. Don't be surprised by certain results. Lots of times we see people say they are going to give a piano away when they die. And when we push giving away the legacy item now, they're not ready to give it up. So make sure you're really ready when you're distributing legacy items. This brings us to our next point, punting things off to our family members. Punting is when you convince, sometimes even through guilt, the next generation into taking an item they probably don't want. We often have furniture that we kept from our parents because we knew they would be upset if we didn't take it, but we never actually wanted it, and we kept it out of obligation. But I will tell you, as you guys probably already know, the next generations, they do not feel that obligation. They simply don't want it. And how do you find out if they want it? You have to ask them directly. If the person says, you know what, I don't want it, try not to say, you just don't know what you want, and save it for them later. If they say they don't want it, we have to listen to that. We have to respect it. Sell or donate the item to someone that may want it instead. So avoid punting your items that your younger generations may not be interested in. That brings us to our next point, donate, donate, donate. There is someone else that needs our stuff more than we do at a certain point. So focus on finding a place you want to give something away to versus how much it's worth. Our nation is built on service. We want to focus on giving people things that they truly may need. Examples include Dress for Success. That's a good donation place for clothes. Souls for Souls, SOLES for SOULS, Souls for Souls. This is a donation for shoes. Tech for Troops is a good donation for electronics. And Catholic charities, women's shelters, of course, your local donation, Goodwill, Salvation Army, those are options as well. So those are just some ideas. And if you know any, please put it in a chat box because I'm sure they'll come up later in the Q&A session. For number 9, we want to be realistic. We often aren't very realistic about the items that we have in our home. This is a picture of an adult male closet. To the left, he has size 28 pants. He also has size 30. 32s, a bunch of 34s, and 3 pair of 36s. There are 20 pairs of pants here, and we have to admit he can only fit about 3 of them. So why are we holding on to them? Because we think we'll probably get back in them? The reality is we won't. It's okay to give away the 28s or the 30s or even the 32s. Food is the same way. Those dates that say they're expired, it's because it's real. Why do we hold on to food? Well, we have to think about our parents and their parents. There's real hunger out there, especially during the Great Depression. Food dating starting in 1984. If there isn't a date on your food, that means it's over 35 years old and it's expired. If you have moved twice and took the food with you both times, it's probably expired. Another thing to check is your seasonings. They often have expiration dates on them. So be aware of that when you're looking to downsize and declutter. Now, this is really important. Paring down paper and photos, things like mail, shredding old documents and bills, photos. We save the best for last, paper. Paper is the hardest because it represents potential contacts, potential lost friendships, potential dates, phone numbers, money, memories. It's all about potential. And we naturally don't want to lose those things, so we hold on to them. We recommend shredding all mail if you have a shredder. And if you don't have a shredder, we recommend putting a cardboard box in the trunk of your car for storage and sorting mail at the source. Take it out of the mailbox, rip it up into small pieces in the box of the trunk of your car. That way, when it's full, you drive to a free shredding place. And I know some communities even have free shredding events. You take it to the box for shredding. And if you put the box in your home, it will never get taken to the shredder. Pictures are the other big part. I know they are for me anyway. But we simply do not have to save every single picture. If you don't know the name of all the people in the picture, you don't have to keep it. Another good tip with the pictures, write out the name and the stories attached to the people in the stories on the back. It isn't about the picture, it's about the people and the emotions behind the stories. You are most likely the only person who remembers these, so it's important for us to write it down. The one thing the family does care about is the story. I say keep 100 pictures in a few gallon-sized bags, write the stories on the picture, and consider getting rid of the rest. The main thing we want you to remember about this session in the last 25 minutes or so is that it's about the stories, it's about the emotions, and the people in your lives. It's not about the stuff. So we want you to celebrate the stories, but think about getting rid of the excess. So I know this is a quick tip session, but we will have time for Q&A. The main thing is that you can't take it with you. If you remember at the start of the presentation, there was a picture of one person that did take his stuff with him. King Tut. The photo on the left was his tomb, also considered his garage. As you can see, he couldn't take it with him, and neither can we. So we hope that these tips, although fast and furious, were helpful. And we'd love to hear from you guys about, what questions you have or any feedback you may have in regards to decluttering and decluttering your home. So Sarah and Ann will be looking in on the questions here.
Okay. Actually, Genesis, I'm going to jump in before I have them go into questions. Okay. I had a number of people during the course of your presentation use the raised hand function. And just again, in webinar format, we can't acknowledge the raised hand. So if you have a specific question or concern, if you would please put it in the chat box, or the Q&A, and we will get to them as quick as we possibly can. And while Sheila and Sarah are getting ready, Genesis, I'll give you your first question, which is, how can I get rid of unused medication?
I'm so glad you asked. And I meant to throw that in earlier because I really, focus in on that as of what I do personally. So unused medications, it depends on your city, your county, your state. There are a few ways that we've learned, some local police departments, but you definitely should call like a non-emergency number to find out that information. Some local pharmacies, I know here in Virginia, CVS has a medication disposal day or medication disposal box. If you're a veteran, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the pharmacies most likely in your local area will take those and dispose of them properly. What I don't recommend is flushing them down the toilet as it goes into our ecosystem and then putting them in the trash, because unfortunately that creates access to medications when they're emptied in landfills and things of that nature. So definitely try to dispose of them properly. And if you have something like a Sharps, your local pharmacies can oftentimes provide Sharps containers. So things like insulin needles and of that nature.
Very good. Sarah, let me come to you next because I think, do you have something you want to add to getting rid of medications? And Sarah, you need to unmute.
Yes, I think I hit the wrong button, but
All right, then you can go to the next question if you'd like.
there aren't any questions in the Q&A box. They've all been, Anne has done a good job about answering them.
I have someone that's sorting out their spices and wants your recommendation on how to do it.
That's a good question about sorting. I would probably focus on the spices that you use the most. I know it probably seems better to sort by maybe like, let's say seasoning specified for like steaks or seasoning specified for chicken, but I actually would focus on what you use the most, meaning almost daily spices. And then I would break things down accordingly.
Also, somebody wants to know, how do you remove your emotions from this process?
Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, how do you remove your emotions from the process of decluttering? People have a lot of emotional issues attached and want to know how to remove them.
Yes, I think that that's definitely a hard one because it's going to be person to person. Sorry about all the noise. That's my dog. I think that that's a hard one because every person is going to be different. So I guess I could speak to me personally. I just would think about things once again, as the slide said earlier. I'd want to focus on the story behind it. The why behind it, the fact that you experienced something with the item, or maybe there was an experience associated with the item, is what you're really taking away from it outside of the item itself. And I know that's easier said than done because of legacy items, but if it's something that you can maybe gift to a family member or donate to a family member and keep that keep that generation or history going, that would be great. But really it's the story and the experience that your emotions are related to, not necessarily the item.
That's actually a great segue into the next question in the Q&A box, Genesis. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What do you do with huge, lovely framed pictures of ancestors?
Oh, wow. I'd have to think about that one. I mean, for me personally, if I had something like that, I would, once my daughter gets old enough, she's only 1 year old right now, but I'd pass it along. But if you have no one to pass it to, it's, that's something that you either, remember we talked about pictures, that's either a decision you'll have to think about maybe to keep, or, I don't want to tell you to get rid of something like that. Maybe some of our others can chime in on what they would do with an item like that.
Well, maybe it's something as simple as taking a photograph of it so that it's not lost altogether, and then identifying who the people are in the photograph, and saving that digitally, or even share it to some of the lost my train of thought here. Things like ancestry.com and things like that might have
Yes. I
old
like that.
photograph storage
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. And you got me to thinking, Trudy. So taking a picture, because everything's electronic these days, and ancestry.com is good, but also just a Google Drive. Like you can create a Google Drive or if you still want to use a USB drive and put some of those really, really important photos that mean a lot to you electronically. One, that's a safe way to harbor that because it'll last longer. It'll be electronic and you can pass that along. I even know some parents that take pictures of like all of their kids' drawings in school because you get hundreds and hundreds every day. And you obviously can't keep them all, but you take the pictures and they create an email and give it to the child, give access to the child at 18. That's another way, they can go back and have those memories. That's a really good idea.
We have someone that wants to know, are there any decluttering business to hire that you can hire to help?
I don't personally know. I'm sure there are people that, specialize in something like that, but I can't give any recommendation at this time.
Genesis, someone with, when we were talking about what to do with old pictures, this participant wanted you to repeat your answer.
Oh, so old pictures, there's a few things. One is earlier in the presentation, look through all of your photos. I know like my own mom, she has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hard copy photos from when we were babies. She actually made photo albums of her favorites. She dated them and put times on them and all these things. And I have that photo book to save. Anything else outside of that photo book from when we were babies, quite honestly, she got rid of because a lot of it was repetitive images and things of that nature. So you can do the same. You don't have to throw away every single photo you have. Find your favorite 100 photos if you have hard copies, and you can create a photo album. You can put them in gallon Ziploc bags and write the story. The other option we were talking about is taking a picture of your pictures. You can actually create photo albums on Google Drive, which is free. All of these things are online. You can do a USB drive and you take pictures of your pictures and put it in an electronic format so that one, they'll always be accessible to someone in your family generations to come if you keep a password or whatever the case may be. And also you don't have clutter in your home just from tons of photo books and photos strewn around. So taking a picture of your pictures and then kind of figuring out which pictures are most valuable to you, writing the story on the back of them, the date, the time, who's in the photo, and then putting it away in a physical hard copy or Ziploc bags.
And along those lines, there's a question from a participant who wants to know what to do with old musical instruments.
We get this one a lot, actually, which we've learned that many local schools programs will, local schools or, you can look as low as elementary all the way to local colleges, especially those with music programs, likely could be interested in donated musical items. So I would start there. And if anyone else has any ideas, we're always welcome to receive those in the chat for musical instruments. But I would start with local schools, especially those with music programs.
Along the same line, one participant said her parents keep various items that are of value. And where do you go to determine if something is of value before discarding?
I guess it would depend on the item. If you're looking to sell things, so to speak, it definitely will depend on the item. And I don't know of one specific area that you would go depending on the item that you're trying to sell. So I don't want to give any recommendations for selling items. I don't want to give the wrong information.
That seems to be it with the question and answer box for right now. There's a question in the chat that says, where to donate costume jewelry.
Pretty much anywhere, I would imagine. You could probably your local Goodwills, your local Salvation Armies, women's shelters, anything like that, because, you know, those are places that usually sell cosmetic type, or not cosmetic items, but clothing type items or jewelry type items. So I would go with local shelters or Goodwill, Salvation Army, things like that for costume jewelry.
If I can throw in a suggestion for those people in Northern Virginia, some of the faith-based organizations, churches, synagogues, what have you, have accessory sales in the spring, and they take costume jewelry.
Also, around Christmas time, a lot of the churches take items for the participants to come in and purchase. I have a question about how can I get some free shredding services?
Yeah, so I know that, for an example, it depends on your community. Like in Northern Virginia, they have free community shredding events, free community shredding days. And this is something, just a simple Google search that you can find in your local area. Certain companies will have free community shredding events, but it's usually something you're going to have to look up. It's not a common thing that's just posted around. So it would be something that I would recommend you search for free community shredding, put your community in there and you can find it. But even your, like you could ask even some local, maybe possible post office, see if that's something that they offer. If you've already kind of ripped up your items to a point and you have a box of them, I would ask around at a place like that. But yes, free community shredding events. Those are things you can look up for your local area.
There are actually some questions coming in fast and furious in the Q&A box. One is how to get rid of electronic devices safely.
So depending on what you're talking about, I know there's the one that AARP is well aware of is, I think I spoke about it earlier, Tech for Troops, I believe is the statement, or the name of the company, but let me just make sure. Yes, Tech for Troops. But also, of course, it depends on what the electronic item is. You know, I'm not exactly sure what you mean safely or what that might be, but Tech for Troops is a really good company to donate electronics only to.
The next one is where to donate and sell books.
Yeah.
I would imagine your local bookstores, some of your libraries will take donated books depending on the condition. Local schools, once again, I think would be a good option. Libraries, local books, and then you'd be surprised. I know a lot of people sometimes in their local communities, like Facebook page, they'll have a community, you know, say you live in Northern Virginia, they'll have a, you know, free books, pick up. People put like little, I know in Washington, D.C., I've seen bookshelves just sitting out in front of homes and you can grab the book and go, but make sure it's that there's a sign that says that before you take it. But yeah, local schools, bookstores, your library, those are good places to start for books.
One of the participants actually has a good suggestion. They say they try to discard things by gifting or donating to the Salvation Army, and then it later results in some tax write-off. This proves so successful that he ends up, or she ends up getting rid of a lot of things that way.
Oh, wow.
Sarah, Sheila, I'm going to jump in for just a quick second, just to remind our audience that all of these suggestions that we are collecting in the chat box and some of them from the Q&A box as well, we are going to edit them and put them together. And in the follow-up email that you will get hopefully tomorrow, depending on how much we have to edit from the chat box, we'll try to get it to you tomorrow. But we'll send you information that we are collecting from that chat box as well for you to utilize and peruse at your convenience. And now,
that
ladies,
leads us into, this participant says, I have lots of paper files, which I am still using. For example, print versions of sermons. I feel that the minute I discard these, I will need them. I don't think my nieces will be interested in my photos, painting, etc. May I keep them so long as I'm using them?
If you're using it, definitely keep it. If you're using it, you may want to create a system for you so that when the time comes where you feel like it's appropriate to discard, it's not so overwhelming. But things like sermons and artistry that you're still actively using for inspiration or whatever the case may be, I would keep anything that I'm actively using. A lot of the downsizing and decluttering tips that we've done before in the past seems to be for items that people definitely aren't commonly using anymore, or they have an emotional attachment to because of history or legacy or whatever the case may be. So if you're actively using it, I wouldn't recommend getting rid of it.
One suggestion is to donate to local historical societies. Things that you have that might be of historic significance. But that's a great.
That's a good
suggestion.
idea.
Take pictures of the pages in your album, then take them apart. That way you can still have pictures around, but you don't have to have a big album necessarily, and you can give them to people.
Very good ideas. We love to hear from you guys.
That's it for the Q&A box, Genesis.
Okay.
And the chat box seems to be slowing down too.
Okay.
It says one of the participants says that she does a lot of decluttering before moving and when unpacking, and I've used that method myself, and it really helps. So you realize, oh, I'm moving, I don't want to pay for all this stuff to be moved, so I'm going to get rid of things. And then when you get to your new place, you look at it and think, well, here's some other things I should have gotten rid of, and that's the time to maybe get rid of them rather than putting them in a shelf. This is a suggestion from the participant.
Yes, and that reminds me, one last thing I wanted to share that I think will be helpful for everyone that we learned from another session. A lot of the tips that I gave you can seem a little bit overwhelming. So one of the things we talked about is doing things quarterly. I think it's best to do things a little bit every day. But if that feels overwhelming, you can split things up quarterly, maybe by season as the season ends. Summer just ended. If you notice, there's a lot of items that you used the previous summer that you didn't use this summer. You may want to get rid of it. So those are good examples of quarterly cleaning your home along with the everyday little cleaning. And then the other thing is knowing kind of what items seem to be the most prevalent that you've used in your home and the things that are not so prevalent anymore, because we evolve as time goes on, being ready to, move those out. Equal in, equal out. If you're bringing in new trends, those older trends, although they seem to make a revolve, as we see, they always come back. It's good to think about getting rid of some of those items.
And Genesis, I'm going to end with this last question. I'm not sure if you have an answer to this, but I'll pose it to maybe Sheila, Sarah, or our audience. And the question is it true that you should not recycle old photos because of the chemicals used in the processing?
That's a great question.
Any thoughts about that?
I do not know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't have an answer to that, but if any of our audience members knows about the chemicals that have been used in photographic processing, please put it in the chat for our audience member. And with that, I'm going to say thank you. Those questions were coming fast and furious, and I appreciate the help and support. On behalf of AARP Virginia, I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening and express our gratitude to Genesis, Sheila, Sarah, Ann, Don, Amber, Raven, some of those folks who were working technically behind the scenes. We could not do this without you, and we also could not do this without an audience. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. We'd love to get your feedback about tonight's program. Again, in the chat box, you'll see a link to a survey. Please take a moment to click on that link and take a few moments to share your feedback with us. As I mentioned earlier, We'll be sending a follow-up email with all of the resources and an edited version of the chat information as well, all the things that we mentioned today. And be sure to check out our calendar of events at aarp.org, virtual VA. Again, it's right next to my name if you're still seeing my picture. aarp.org/virtual VA for upcoming virtual and in some cases in-person programs that are coming up the rest of September, October, November, and beyond. Until next time, we wish you the best in your downsizing and decluttering. This concludes our program for this evening. Thanks again for joining us. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Same time, same channel. Thanks for joining us. Have a good evening.
And could the crew join us up for a debrief in the other room?